Tamara Basic Tees here, and this week I'm going to show you how to make a shorts romper. One of my subscribers has asked me to show you how to make one, and I just happen to have an Etsy order. And if you didn't notice, the wall behind me is pretty empty. This is probably going to be the last video I shoot here at this house. The closing date for my new house is sometime in the beginning of April, so the next video will be in Iowa. So let's start sewing. So the first machine that we're going to be on is going to be the serger, and we're going to sew the inside pieces of the top where it covers the breasts. This is really similar to a triangle top tutorial, and I'm going to sew a piping piece on the inside of both of the top coverage pieces. And you want to pull and stretch a little bit. I always go half an inch over the side as you're going through because it kind of makes it pucker a little bit. And then when we do the opposite side, we want to make sure that we get the opposite side so it's not all kind of janky. So half an inch over the top. Half an inch over the bottom, and you're going to stretch the piping piece to fit. So now we're going to go over to the cover stitch or the zigzag machine. Now this time we're going to wrap the piping piece over the fabric that we stay stitched it down to. So you just kind of wrap it like this. There's the tip of it. That's what it looks like. And you're just going to do both sides. I do this all the time. Now that we're done with that, we're going to go back over to the serger machine and stay stitch the other side of the top down. So I've pinned down the piping pieces according to my pattern so that they're a little bit smaller than the opposite side, so when you pull on them, it's going to make it have this pucker, this gather, and then the string goes over the top because this is going to tie around your neck. So we're just going to do a stay stitch with the serger. So I'm pulling the piping to match the base piece, and don't ever run over your pins or you'll chip your needle. So now we're going to go back over to the cover stitch machine or the zigzag machine. So we're going to, once again on the other side, wrap the piping pieces around the fabric and create the string that goes around the top that ties around the neck. So fold it around. I have to lean over and get my scissors there. So make sure it's wrapped really tight when you get to the contact piece where the other piece of piping is, because it tends to move sometimes. So now we're going to go to the straight stitch machine, or you can just change your zigzag machine over to a straight stitch. So this pattern, this shorts romper has ruching or a pucker or a gather at the butt. And I actually usually pin where I want my elastic to go. I don't really measure the elastic, but I probably won't even measure the elastic on my pattern piece. So you're just going to have to pull it as tight as you want to. So I put the 1/8 inch elastic underneath the pin, and then I get it ready to start. I just start it just a little teeny tiny bit. So once I've started it and it's kind of sealed down a little bit, I go to about halfway in between the shorts and where I have the pin on the bottom. I don't know if you can see the pin on the bottom there. And then I stretch it all the way through to the other pin. From like the center, I stretch it to the other pin. And then I just sew it through. And then I kind of seal the stitch back and forth at the bottom. I didn't do it at the top because I'm going to hem over that anyway. So that's done. Just take your pins out and then you're going to sew the rest of it together. Now the other thing that I'm going to do with the straight stitch machine is I am going to make my stitch length as long as it'll go, because we're going to put a gather at the bottom part of the top that we made. So I'm just going to go along the edge of the bottom because there's going to be a gather right here where it's going to gather together, and I am going to just put a stitch right down here at the bottom. And make your strings a little bit long because you're going to pull on them, and that's what's going to make it gather together. So now we're going to go over to the cutting table and I'm going to show you how to do this gather stitch. So I have pinned the shorts to the top of the front of the shorts, and see how there's all this extra fabric here? That's what this gathering stitch did. I can pull on one piece of the thread and it'll make it gather. See how that pucker kind of went through there? And then I'm going to even it out how I want it, and I'm going to pin it, and then I'm going to go back to the straight stitch machine and put a stay stitch in there so that it doesn't slip and slide as I'm sewing it on the serger machine to put like a stay stitch. So I'll do it one more time. You did the longest stitch length that you could on your straight stitch machine, and then you take one of the threads, either side. They usually say it's the underside, but usually I don't have a problem pulling on either side of the thread, just one side or the other, and it'll pull it together and make it gather. And then you'll spread it apart and make it, and then pin it however you want it to gather or pucker, and then we'll go back to the serger and stay stitch it down. So I already stay stitched down the gathered top piece to the top part of the shorts, and then I'm going to go through and do it again with a serger stitch just because I like the way it looks. Yeah, I'm picky, I guess. And part of the reason I do it too is because the serger stitch is going to stretch with the shorts, as the straight stitch really doesn't. So when you're done with that, you can open it up, and that's what it looks like. That's sewn to the top of the shorts, and this is the top piece that's going to go over the breasts. So now I'm going to sew the back piece that has a ruching or gather in the back to the front of the shorts, at the sides and at the crotch. Now we're going to go over to the zigzag machine or the cover stitch machine and just hem the rest of it all the way around. Now I'm going to hem the leg holes and around the top, and this will be the last stitch we do. So we've hemmed both leg hole a 1/2 inch, both holes for the leg. I don't know if that really sounded right. So we're going to do it around the top of the shorts band, or the top of the shorts also. And then when we get over to where the top piece comes in, I'm going to kind of fold it over about a 1/2 inch and make it the same. But a lot of the time I just kind of feel where the bump is. I don't really look at it. Like if you notice when I hem everything a 1/2 inch, I usually look at it as I go along. I can't really look at it on this, so I have to kind of feel where it is. And where we put the gather earlier, I'm just going to fold over that, and that's going to hide that. So that's it for your shorts romper. The pattern will be available in the next month or so. I'm going to go ahead and cut off all the extra thread pieces, but that's how that looks with the shorts and the romper top, the top of the romper with that gathering stitch in there. Well, I hope you found this tutorial educational. If you're interested in what I'm dishing out, go ahead and subscribe.